doing?
Doing fine, thank you.
Very good to hear. Very good to hear. So, how was your week preparing for this beautiful talk?
Yes, I did a little bit time. I had already given this talk first time, so it wasn't difficult to prepare. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. We're very happy to hear that. So, we hope this talk will be a little better than the last one. I'm joking. So, for everyone who's joining us, welcome on Facebook, on YouTube. Welcome on Zoom. We hope that you all joining today are doing well this Sunday, September 26th, 2021. Now, this week's presenter is Dr. Hushidar Mutlaq, and he is a professor emeritus at Central Michigan University. He is the author of more than 30 volumes. He taught for 33 years at 2 universities in the United States and retired at age 63. He taught courses in psychology of human development, educational psychology, mental health, and creativity. His works relate to the knowledge of God, understanding the Bible, the Quran, and the fulfillment of prophecies in the advent of the Baha'i faith. And for more information, you can visit our beautiful biography of Dr. Mutlaq here on www.clearwaterbaha'is.org, or you can go to globalperspectives.org. Is that right, Dr. Mutlaq? Globalperspectives.org.
Yes.
Beautiful. So now as to today's topic, this week's topic is the role of mothers in building a better world. In this talk, Dr. Mutlaq will discuss several key spiritual principles to provide the foundation for us to understand the true nature of a human being. And then he will speak about the importance of motherhood and how it relates to our collective spiritual and social journey. Dr. Mutlaq, welcome. We're so happy to have you to speak today. And with that being said, please, we're ready to see your presentation.
Thank you. Greetings to all of you listeners. I feel honored to be in the presence of many almost invisible listeners, lovers of mankind, lovers of knowledge. Zoom is the latest marvel of technology. It brings us together more than ever before. My talk is about the other wing of progress, a spiritual wing. The role of parents, especially mothers, in creating a new world civilization. Before we talk about the role of mothers, we need to know human beings. We need to recognize who we are, why are we here, where are we going. All of this knowledge is essential before we can discover the role of mothers. I refer to, Baha'u'llah says the first and foremost knowledge is the knowledge of God, exalted be his glory. The spiritual design, we need to learn the knowledge of God is the same as knowing the spiritual design of creation. When God created the universe, he made them similar. The physical world and the spiritual world are very similar. In the physical world, we have a sun and we have eyes. In the spiritual world, we also have a sun and eyes. That eyes is within us. It is in our soul. Christ said, I'm the light of the world. Baha'u'llah means the light of God or the glory of God. Both meanings are accurate. And he refers to himself many times as the sun. So here we need to recognize that the spiritual sun and the spiritual eye within eyes. One is called insight and the other one is eyesight. What can we see in darkness? Can we see anything in darkness? The same way, without the light of God, we are blind. We are not able to see anything. Another example, God made us in his own image. We are like a precious diamond. What is the value of diamond in darkness? Only light reveals the beauty of diamond. Under the light of God, everything is absolute perfection. God would not create anything less than perfection. The reason we don't see perfection is because we don't shed, either we are not totally, don't have the eyesight within, or we don't have the light of God on our soul. So that's the reason we see imperfection. When we enter this light, when we recognize the light of God and walk in his light with spiritual eyes, what do we see? The first and most important lesson we learn is that we are a spiritual being, not physical being. We are spirits, not bodies. The realization of this fact changes everything in our life. It transforms us. This knowledge teaches us that our body is only a cloth we are wearing, is a shoe, is a hat, is something that covers us. It is not us. This knowledge lifts us from the earthly world to heavenly world. If we are a chicken in a farm, we become an eagle soaring in the heavens. We are born again. Jesus said we must be born again. This knowledge allows us to be born again, to become a new creature. Baha'u'llah says, a new race of man. He says that it's come to create a new race of human beings. As I said, the most significant knowledge is the knowledge of God, is learning the spiritual design of creation. I have written a book by that title. Maybe if you wish, you may have a class later, a small group, to study that book. The idea that there is a spiritual world is not new in the Baha'i faith. It goes back as far back as we can think. Jesus referred to this spiritual world as the kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of God. And he said, seek you first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. That's exactly what the Baha'i faith teaches. The first and foremost knowledge is to learn the mysteries of a spiritual kingdom. And then he said, everything else will be added unto, that everything good will follow. But without that, nothing good can come into our lives. We must learn and live in that spiritual kingdom. Let's see what lessons, when we enter that kingdom, what lessons that does that kingdom teach us? The first lesson it teaches us is that this world, this life, is a second in eternity. What significance has 1 second compared to eternity? Baha'u'llah says this life passes as quickly as the blinking of an eye. This is the first lesson we learn. The second lesson we learn is that our eternity, our everlasting destiny, depends on this 1 second. That's amazing. This is the design of creation. This is the womb of our everlasting life. This knowledge gives us incredible motivation to make sure that this 1 second is the best we can live. Nothing can compare with this motivation, with this knowledge. Not only this knowledge connects us to eternity, it also connects us to the universe. On the one hand, we are connected to eternity. On the other hand, we are connected to all universe. The whole world is part of us. This is the incredible difference it makes in our life. The fourth lesson it teaches us is our sense of value changes. We realize that our value is in our soul, not in our savings. How many people are searching for wealth? They devote their whole life to gain more wealth without knowing that the true wealth is in their soul. They can become the richest person in the world through efforts. Baha says that many people pride themselves in their jewels. He says the earth needs to be proud because that's the source of these jewelries. The earth should be proud to give you these jewelries. The fifth lesson we learn is the true secret of happiness. We learn that true happiness can come to us only by living in the spiritual kingdom, not in a mansion. So these are incredible changes, lessons we can learn when we enter this spiritual world. Let's now look at the signs of entering this kingdom, the spiritual kingdom. If you ask 100 people, whether they're atheists or they're communists or they're Christians or Muslim or Baha'is or anyone, they seem to be happy with their beliefs. They say, this is the way, you know. I've spoken with many atheists and they're sure that there's no God and they're very happy with their beliefs. So self-deception is one of the qualities of human beings. I would say that self-deception is lying to ourselves. It's the same as lying. For every lie that people tell to others, I think 1,000,000 times more lies they tell themselves. So self-deception is what keeps the world as it is. Let's continue with the signs. What are other signs? Another sign is that we regard God always present. How much joyful it is to be that God is within us. In the Quran says, God is closer to us than our jugular vein. Baha'u'llah says, your heart is my home, God speaking, purified for my descent. So this is the greatest joy to know that the creator of the universe is within us. What an honor. Can you imagine anything comparable with this? That God, infinite greatness, loves to live in our heart. Another change that takes place, another sign of entering that kingdom, is that our love for good deeds multiplies many times. We lose our ability to do anything wrong. I gave this example, I've given it many times. You would not undress in front of an audience, because feeling of shame prevents you. The same thing happens when we know God is present. You will not be able to engage in any misdeed because you're ashamed. But God, you know God is watching you. How could you do anything shameful? Baha says that if anyone knows the consequence of bad deeds, he will never engage in bad deeds. Let's continue with other changes, other signs that being in that kingdom. Our love for knowledge, especially the knowledge of God, increases, multiplies many times. The light of God is in the word of God. Without knowing God, without reading the word of God, we cannot know God and we cannot benefit from that light. The next change, the next sign is that we love to pray. Wouldn't you love to speak with your loved ones? How much more should we enjoy and love to speak to God. Praying is speaking to God, and God is our lover and our beloved. The fifth sign of being in that kingdom, we extend that love of God to all people because we realize we are all one. How could we exclude anyone from that love? The sixth sign is our attitude towards suffering. Today, people are suffering more than ever before in the history of mankind. Jesus said it would be a time of stress and distress, the like of which the world has never seen, nor will it ever see. So don't be surprised if you're facing all kinds of problems and difficulties in your life. Our power to cope with suffering multiplies many times. Here I have the honor of giving you an example that I experienced when I was in Clearwater. I lived in Clearwater for several months. I was the guest of Mr. Hakim. And in one of the talks I presented in the Baha'i Center, after the talk, a lady about 40 years of age, highly educated, came to me and said, I have many difficulties. There wasn't much time. She didn't tell me what were the source of her problems. And I had no time to ask her more questions. I said, I have one suggestion. Please read the Tablet of Patience. This is an epistle, a tablet Baha'u'llah revealed in honor of martyrs of Nairis. They suffered beyond estimation. It's a very long episode. So I left and came back next year to Clearwater, and this lady came to me and said, thank you for suggesting to me to read that tablet. Now I am praying for more suffering. I could not believe her words. I told her, I am lucky if you can cope with the pain and suffering and difficulties that I'm facing now. And now you are praying for suffering, you're far ahead of me. This is the power of the word of God. This is the power of entering that kingdom. The seventh sign of entering that kingdom is that we don't see anyone as enemy. Many people are, we all find people who criticize us, who find fault with us, who look down upon us. And of course, we feel very uncomfortable. We want to defend ourselves. And what happens is that we see our enemies, the people who dislike us, who try to degrade us. We see them as ladder by whom we can rise higher and higher. Only during the time of difficulties can we reveal our true self. So when you find someone who dislikes you or mistreats you, do not look down on that person. Say, here's my chance to use that supposed perceived enemy as a friend. I use him as a ladder to rise higher and higher. To summarize all of these changes, by entering that kingdom, we are born from the physical world in the spiritual world. Where everything is in absolute perfection. Without the knowledge of God, we are a diamond in darkness. In darkness, everything gets lost. We get lost. So what is the way we can cultivate this diamond, purify it, and bring it to light? The way to enter that kingdom, to bring this diamond to its capacity so it shines, is through education. Now we're getting closer to role of mothers. The section I presented was a preparation. Without that preparation, we cannot appreciate the role of mothers. So through education, we can become what we are expected to become, what we are intended to become. Baha'u'llah says we are a treasure, and all those jewels are hidden. Education is the means through which those treasures, those jewels, that diamond can appear, can be released. Another example is like a seed. You look at a seed and you don't see any beauty in a seed. Seed of a flower or a fruit. Only through training, through cultivation, we see the beauty of a rose or the beauty of all those fruits that we enjoy. So education is important, is the means of achieving the goal. Let's see what psychologists say about this. I taught psychology and in fact mental health for many, many years. And famous psychologist Abraham Maslow, you've heard about him. He studied the qualities of self-actualized people. And that means the people who reach the maximum of their potential. He said that according to his standard, 1% of people become self-actualized, that is, develop their potential to the ideal level. But by the spiritual standard, I believe that number goes down. Maybe 1 in 1,000 people are able to cultivate all their potentials. So let's look at those potentials. What are those potentials? There are 6 potentials that God gave us, and we need to cultivate all of them. The first one is our bodies. What else do we have in this world to work with except our physical body? According to God's plan of creation, his design of creation, we must do every effort to keep our bodies in good shape, healthy. In fact, in the scriptures says, and Baha'u'llah confirms this, that there are 2 kinds of knowledge of body and knowledge of religion. And he says the knowledge of body comes first, because how could we love people or love God without having a healthy body? A sick body belongs to a hospital. So according to God's plan, our body is a sacred temple. It must be kept, protected, preserved as long as possible. People who don't respect their bodies by eating junk food, they're disrespecting God's plan of creation. The second potential we have is moral potential, and everybody knows about that. We have to be honest. Abdul Baha said the foundation of all virtues is honesty. If you're not honest, we are not human beings. The third potential is social potential. This relates to our ability to communicate with people, to work with people. Racial prejudice is an example of failure to know God's plan of creation. Instead of having prejudice against other races and other nations, we praise them, we appreciate, because diversity is a secret of beauty of creation. The fourth potential is education, schooling. We must learn to read and write. This is obvious. And in the Baha'i faith, of course, education is required. The fifth potential is mental potential. This relates to cultivation of the brain. When I taught psychology, I always spoke of 2 abilities that psychologists teach us. We have one is convergent thinking, the other one is divergent thinking. Convergent thinking relates to learning concepts as they are. Divergent thinking refers to creating new ideas, discovering new ideas. This is not emphasized in our school system, and I taught creativity as the introduction you heard for many, many years, for decades. And my students love this. The sixth potential is the spiritual potential, which is a major topic of our discussion. Now let's get closer to the topic, the role of mothers. So we now we know who we are. We know the six potentials we have. Now we need to learn the role of mother in cultivating these potentials. Without knowing who we are, we cannot appreciate the role of mothers. So let's look at some of the Baha'i teachings about motherhood. The first teaching, which taught maybe over a century ago now, psychologists also agree, is that childhood years are the most significant years. Abdul Baha uses the example of a branch that can be bent when it's very young, but when it becomes a towering tree, you cannot change it. Every year, education becomes more difficult than the previous year. So this again shows the role of mothers. The second teaching of the Baha'i faith about motherhood is revolutionary. I have not read this anywhere in any book or heard from any source, that mothers are the first and foremost educator of the child. This is extremely critical and revolutionary. The third principle is also revolutionary, that you never hear about anywhere else in any book from any source, is that the education of daughters is preferable to education of sons. This is just the opposite of what the world has been practicing. The fourth teaching in the Baha'i faith about education that is also revolutionary is the spiritual training of children is more significant than their schooling, than going to school. Abdul Baha says a child of a good character is but uneducated is far preferable to a child who is educated but has bad character, who is mentally deviant. The fifth teaching in the Baha'i faith is physical punishment is forbidden. Why? Every child is the image of God. When you punish a child, you're showing disrespect to God. And if you need to use physical punishment, if you need to discipline, the problem is in you, not in your child. You must change your ways. Let's now look at fully functioning families, fully functioning children. What do children need? Again, psychology helped us. Abraham Maslow discovered that the first and foremost psychological need we have is security. We must feel safe at home. We must make every effort to create a very peaceful environment. When I taught at the university, I made sure that the class was not a threatening environment. My students said that when they come to my class, they feel relaxed. They had all kinds of pressures, anxieties, problems, all kinds, and they would find that that hour that they spent in my class was relieve their tension. And we had sometimes guests because they would ask their friends to come and relax in my class. This is very unusual. The second sign of a fully functioning home is absolute unity between parents. In the Baha'i writings, we are told that a couple should be one soul in two bodies. What happens when you don't have unity? When you argue with each other, when you have disagreements, hopefully not, you yell at each other, scream at each other, the child loses his trust in you. You're not a reliable source for that child. He says, they don't know what they're doing. I better find someone else some other source to follow. Look at the statistics of divorce in this country to know what's going on today in the world. I think in most countries this is true, but in the United States, 50% of marriages lead to divorce. What is the condition of those children who live under those families who eventually end up in divorce? What about the other 50? The other 50, some sources estimate that 40 of them do not treat each other, the couples do not treat each other according to rules of justice and compassion. Justice means equality, and compassion, of course, we know it means love and affection. So we have only, as out of every 100 marriages, perhaps 10 that provides a model of unity and peace to children. The third sign of a fully functioning family is this, that we said we don't punish children. You actually respect your children. You find them an image of God. They are the best and the purest human beings on the planet. Why? Jesus said, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven unless you become like children. Children should be our models of purity and innocence. The fourth sign of fully functioning family, ideal family, is that parents not only show love to their children, but to all children. They do not draw a line, because all children are children of God. They are not your children. They belong to God. And therefore, they all are yours. They all are ours. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. This applies obviously to children. We should love all children as our children. The fifth sign of a fully functioning ideal family is the amount of control is minimal. When you need to control children, you are violating their freedom of choice. It is best to give children as much freedom as possible. The only limit is danger. If you see that there is any danger to their lives, you protect them. Otherwise, the more freedom you give them, the better it is. The more they would be able to grow and become a true human being, making choice. This question of freedom to children has enormous consequence in the growth of the brain. I will talk about that later, that how it affects the neurons in the brain. But I'd like to give you an example that I gave in my last talk about a family in my neighborhood. It was an amazing example. I take a walk every day as long as the weather is good to stay healthy. And I was walking, I saw a little girl, I think she was 8 years old, bending on the pavement and doing something. I didn't know what it was. I got close to her and said, what are you doing? I am saving ants. There were some ants in water, they were drowning, and she was saving those ants. I said, why? What caused you to have such a compassion for ants? She said, I'm a vegetarian. What an answer. 8-year-old says, I'm vegetarian. I said, this is amazing. How could you be a vegetarian? How decide to be a vegetarian at age 8? She said, I have been vegetarian since I was 6. That even astonished me more. While I was talking with her, her mother got concerned to see a stranger talking to her daughter. So she came closer and I asked her, I told her that that's what your daughter is. Is it true? She said, yes, yes, we've given her a freedom to become a vegetarian. I said, this little girl needs to be in the book of world records. I do not know anyone has ever decided to become vegetarian at age 6. And I complimented the mother. And of course, the father, of course, he agreed also. Both of them should be complimented for giving this level of freedom to their child. This is the ultimate respect to the choice of that child. The sixth sign of a fully functioning family, ideal family, is that you do not overprotect your child. Overprotection is another kind of control. You do it in the sense of loving the child, but you do the same kind of harm by controlling. You do not allow that child to decide, become a fully functioning, free person to make choices. Overprotected child is a spoiled child. Abdul Baha says, let children experience hardship. That is how their harden, their soul can grow and be prepared, ready to face life later. The seventh sign of fully functioning home is that you don't, I mentioned this before, but I repeat, you do not feel to discipline the child. When you say, I must discipline the child, it means you have a problem. You have done something wrong. The eighth sign of a fully functioning home, ideal home, is that you respect your spouse. You compliment your spouse in front of children. This strengthens the confidence of your children in you. They know that you're one. They know that you like each other, and they trust you. That's the only way you can trust, by showing. Could you? Okay, I'm sorry, the telephone rang. That's turn it off. Okay. The next sign, the next principle that we need to learn is the word identification. If you study the course, if you've taken a course in psychology, you've heard the word identification. You should know the power of identification. We always like to be, we try to imitate the people we admire. So if your children admire you and they see you respect each other, you're one, then they will want to become like you. You don't need to discipline them. You don't need to pressure them, to even advise them, lecture at them. They will naturally want to be like you. Just think about this principle identification in young people. Young people want to be like the movie star, athlete, a singer, someone they admire. They want to be like that person. The reason is that they identify with that person. And this is the same principle God created so that children can identify with their parents and want to be like them. The ninth principle of an ideal family, sign of ideal family, is love for knowledge. Every home, every child should see his parents, her parents read together, discuss issues, and read to children, especially spiritual knowledge, the knowledge of God. You must set an example for those children, because the light, we mentioned the light that gives us joy and peace and understanding, is the light of God. And the light of God is found only in the knowledge of God, the knowledge that God reveals to us through his redeemers and messengers. Read stories of sacrifice, of true believers. If you're Christian, you can read stories of saints. And if you're Baha'is, you can read the stories of martyrs. We have a book called Dawnbreakers. It's a very big book. And Mr. William Sears summarized it in a smaller book called Release the Sun. I think this would be an ideal source to read and ask together and ask children to listen to these stories of sacrifice so they learn the other side of life, the difficulties that all of us face and those early believers face, and they gave their lives. When I was in elementary school, my brother, who was 10 years older, he passed away recently, he would read the story, Dawnbreakers, to all of us at home. And this affected me so deeply that my daydream was martyrdom. You may not like this, of course, but imagine the daydream children have today is to go to a football game or to buy have their favorite toy. And my daydream was to become like those martyrs. The 10th sign of a fully functioning family is to encourage and appreciate diversity. We have racism in this country as a problem. Children must learn the example. Abdul Baha said that we are all like flowers in a garden, and the diversity adds to the beauty of this. And he showed a chocolate, puts chocolate against the face of a black boy to show that you can be black and sweet. They must learn that being of a different race is not a disadvantage, but adds to an advantage, is a sign of perfection and beauty of creation. They learn against an opposite in the society, but we have to fight against this from early childhood. The 11th sign of a fully functioning family is appreciate diversity of views, not only diversity of race, but also diversity of views. You know, in my experience, all the time I find people feel negative, critical of those who think differently. They feel they must fight back, they must argue, they must prove their point. But according to the Baha'i teachings, Abdul Baha says that the sparkle of truth, the lightning, the light of truth appears from clashes of ideas. When people have a different view from us, we should appreciate them. Say, thank you for presenting another view. That will help me to think about this more, rather than feeling that that person is against us. Appreciation, and set a model to your children so they learn to not feel offended by someone who disagrees with them. This is a major problem in all communities, including in Baha'i community. Unless we learn this lesson, we cannot attain unity of mankind. Unity of mankind must start from within, where we appreciate diversity rather than criticize diversity of views. I spoke about freedom at home, and I said something about how giving children freedom to think, to face obstacles, solve their own problems is an essential ingredient of a fully functioning families. And I said it's impact on the brain. I did not cover this in my previous presentation. So let's look at this issue and see how early education affects the structure of the brain. Many people are not aware of this. I wrote a small book. It's called The Four Valleys of the Mind. Baha'u'llah wrote a book, has a book called The Four Valleys. It shows the four ways people can reach God. You know, we are unique, and all of us can reach the same goal by taking different paths. But many of us do not realize that the same holds true with our brain. And it's I believe, as related to the four values that Baha'u'llah wrote. In other words, the structure of our brain affects the way we seek to approach God. So let's look at these four levels of the brain. The most primitive level of our brain, I call it egg-minded people. Egg-minded people are those who are completely closed to new ideas. You've met them many times. I've met them many, many, many times. No proof, no evidence can convince them. I do not know the percentage, but the number must be very high. Look at this Taliban in Afghanistan. Look at close-minded Christians. You present 1,000,000 times more evidence that Baha'u'llah is the Redeemer. They don't. It doesn't affect them. Young people who drink and drive, drugs, you name it. Many people are egg-minded. Evidence, proof, nothing can affect them. This is the lowest level of the mind. The second level of the mind, these are all affected by the education that children receive early in childhood. The second level of the mind is called chicken-minded. If you've been to a farm, you know that a rooster rules the chickens. They're all afraid of the rooster. I've seen it. And these are the people who have a little bit of opening. Their egg has a little hole, but is directed toward a leader. We all see that very, very common. Baha'u'llah says repeatedly that the reason people fail to recognize the messenger of God is their leaders, because people look up to their leaders to lead them. And they don't think for themselves, they don't judge for themselves. They expect, if they're Catholic, the priest must tell them. If they're Protestant, the minister must tell them. If they're Muslim, the mullah must tell them, on and on and on. These are also problem people. The next level of the brain is called eagle-minded people. Eagle-minded people who are the ones who are concerned about the world. Environmentalists is the best example of this eagle-minded people. They look at the big picture. They see the world as one. They're social activists. And many of these people become Baha'is because Baha'i teachings are all based on unity of mankind. The world is one country. These are the people, a lot of them become Baha'is. This is a wonderful level to be, but it's not the last. The last level I have called phoenix-minded. Phoenix is a mythical bird that rises out of its ashes. This is another term for this level is spiritual-minded. People who not only see the surface of the world as one, but also look deep inside the world and see the treasures hidden beneath surface. These are the people who see the image of God in themselves. Then they enter the spiritual world. This is the highest level of spiritual development. Early childhood education, I believe, and it's been proven, affects the structure of our brain. Our brain, the more freedom parents, especially mothers, give their children to explore, to be creative, to encourage them to find solutions and numerous solutions to every problem, to face difficulties, the better, the higher the level of their brains. And if a brain is damaged early in childhood, it is impossible to change it. There are 100 billion neurons in our brain. Is the most complex structure in the universe. The brain of a human being, about 15 times the population of the earth. There are neurons and cells in the brain actively working. And when you limit the freedom of a child. These neurons are not able to make many connections. They become rigid. And this is the reason that no evidence can force them. Mothers should recognize this role and know the profound impact they have on their little babies. So getting closer and closer to role of mothers. What is the biggest problem in the world? Is it war? Is it poverty? It is cruelty? None of the above. It is failure to know the capacity, the potential, and the power of women in changing the world. This is the root cause of all the problems. Every other problem is a symptom, but this is the root cause. Men must learn, we must teach men, and men will learn that they are not superior to women. This idea of this illusion has persisted for many centuries. In fact, they must show humility toward women because of their spiritual capacities. Not only they don't have any, they are not superior, they must recognize their weakness and show humility before women. The third thing is that women should recognize their glorious, exalted station and honor that God has given them. They should recognize who they are. And the core of my talk really is about this recognition of the station of, they must be proud to be a woman. They should not try to be like men. You know, in our age, we find some women, some feel men are superior, they want to be like men. But this is contrary to the design of creation. They will try to remain feminine, just as God designed them to be, and in no way copy men. The secret of beauty in the world is diversity. And to become women becoming like men and men becoming like women is an insult to that feature of design, diversity. Now, we have a book of laws. It's called the Most Holy Book. I have written a book about this, actually. It's called The Mysteries of the Most Holy Book. And I believe, this is my personal belief, that all the laws of the Atlas are centered on this issue: separation of roles of men and women. True laws, our Creator teaches us spiritual lessons. And he gave us the key in that book to understand this. He said, do not think that we have revealed a code of laws, but we have unsealed the choice wine. So what does that mean? Don't look at the surface of the laws. We have not revealed the code of laws. These are laws, should be obeyed, but this is not the purpose of laws of God. We have unsealed the choice wine. What that means is the spiritual message is in the bottle. The wine is put in a bottle, sealed, so it would be protected, and you touch the bottle, you smell the bottle, you don't get anything. It's just a little bit of glass. But open the bottle and lo and behold, you have that intoxicating liquid. Now, in this case, intoxicate your soul. So what Baha'u'llah teaches us in this one quotation, which is the key to all of his laws, in fact, is a key to the salvation of human race, is that the spiritual principles are what we need to understand from those laws. God uses laws to get our attention to one thing, and that is the spiritual principles. And that spiritual principles focuses on one issue: separation of the role of men and women. Unless we recognize this, when practice this, the world will be in turmoil. The problems will continue. So why is the role of mother so significant? The answer is that they have the whole world in their hand. Do you remember there was a song about God? You have the whole world in their hand. I say the true answer in our world is that women, mothers, have the whole world in their hand. Why? They are co-creators with God. They create a child in their womb physically, and then the next task, the most awesome task is to help that child be born again from the physical world into a spiritual world, to become a new race of man. Unless we create this new race of man, the world will not see sign of peace. The key to all our problems, small and big, is in the hand of mothers. God has given this responsibility to mothers. He is not giving it to fathers. There is a clear separation of responsibility. To create a new civilization, as we said, we have the physical world and the spiritual world. God has given the advancement of the physical world to men. They are the ones, the breadwinners, they are the ones who need to provide for the family. And then the spiritual world is almost entirely, or primarily, you could argue about this issue, but I would say 90% is given given to mothers. They are the ones who must create a new civilization. And you tell me which one is more important, create a material civilization or a spiritual civilization? The answer is clear. The spiritual civilization is millions of times more significant. Look at our country, this United States or any advanced countries, technologically advanced countries. They have everything that money can buy, yet look at the misery, the suffering, the depression, the suicide, every sign of the decline. We see it in these so-called advanced, technologically advanced countries. The poverty is not a problem. It's spiritual poverty. Physical poverty is far more significant than physical. You could have a million charitable people like Bill Gates. They will not be able to change the world that much. They will only deal with the symptoms. Only mothers have the power to create a new world. I'm getting close to the end. In the book of Laws, Baha'u'llah emphasizes 4 virtues that are very relevant to mothers and motherhood and to children. The first one is gentleness. We are created to be as gentle as possible against harshness. The second one is cleanliness, because our body is a temple of God, of our soul. We must keep it clean. The third rule is refinement. I believe refinement means good taste. If you dress, make sure you use good taste. Don't make yourself a mockery of others. And the fourth one, and maybe even more significant of all, is courtesy. Baha'u'llah says, I have placed courtesy at the top of character. In my last talk, I said, use the word virtue. It was wrong. It's the part of our character. It's the most significant, the head of the qualities that we display to other people is courtesy. Because children may not know what love is, what respect is, but they can relate very easily to signs of courtesy, saying thank you, how are you, smiling to people when they talk to people, showing positive facial expressions, and of course, you as mothers and fathers also, of course, you can be a model for this. These are the virtues, the qualities that Baha'u'llah emphasizes that relate to mothers. So what is the goal of the Baha'i faith? What has Baha'u'llah come to accomplish? In one of his writings, he gives two signs, and I'd like to share with you. He says, I have come to create a world in which if a most beautiful woman walks from the east to the west, no one will look at her with lust. Okay? Imagine that world. And then he says, if someone walks over mountains, mines of gold and silver, he will not pay any attention. And I would add to that, just give you a practical example. Somebody leaves you $100 million. And you're sure that if you take 1 million, he will never know. The thought even of you taking $1 from that $100 million does not cross your mind. This is the level of honesty that Baha'u'llah has come to create. It would be impossible for even to think of doing something wrong, let alone doing it. I encourage you to teach this knowledge to all parents, young people who are getting married, so they know in advance what they can expect, how they should, what kind of family, what kind of children they want to have. One more thing that I did not include in my talk, I like to, recently I have people brought to my attention. They say, okay, it's too late. We have children who are in elementary school, high school, college. What can we do now? And I'd like to also address this question. You're a mother, but you have older children. The best way to retrain your children is to start with topics that are motivational. You see, motivation is the most significant topic in psychology. Look at other people who want to lose weight, who want to exercise, who want to do this and that, and resolutions, and they're not motivated to do. If we can motivate people to do anything, we have solved most of the problem of the world. So what can you do to motivate those high school, young people, elementary, college? Start with classes. We are social beings and we can motivate each other to class. I suggest, I had such a groups in my teaching career for many, many years, a group of 5 to 9. You don't need the large group. The ideal group is 5 to 9. You find 5 to 9 people, either in your community or through Zoom meetings, who share, participate in a class that you organize. So what is the most motivating topic to get young people's attention? The most motivating topic and the most essential topic is knowing God. That is a central issue. Once we know God, everything else will take care of itself, because God has given us everything we need to live in happiness. I have had the honor of writing a book. It's called The Spiritual Design of Creation. That is equivalent to knowledge of God. That's what Baha'u'llah says, that it is a purpose for which we have been created, to know God and to love God. Start a class using that book, or if you can find any other book. I have not heard of anyone writing a book about God, which is the most essential topic that you can imagine. Start and have one person chair every meeting, who will be responsible for sort of directing the meeting. Each person is responsible to share a message from, you could read 2 or 3 chapters every week, to share 1 or 2 or 3 or as many messages that that individual feels significant, or a question that individual may have. That would generate discussion and sharing of ideas. And then as you move, you find that your love for God, your knowledge of God advances. The second topic that motivates us is afterlife. I don't know there is anything that will make as much difference as knowing that we are here for a second in eternity and life continues beyond. So have a class on the afterlife. I have had the honor of compiling a book. It's called Unto God Shall Be Written. It's a small book quotation from Baha'u'llah's writing, and the Glorious Journey to God quotations from Bible, the Quran, and Baha'i writings about afterlife. So afterlife is another topic that will motivate people. The third and final topic is history. People are motivated by the example of the best people who ever lived. We need to remember them. And as I told you, when I was young, my brother read the Dawnbreakers, and it really made a difference in my life. So Dawnbreakers is a little bit too long and a little bit complicated. You can use Release the Sun by William Sears. The next topic that I believe is motivational is prophecy. Today, seldom people read this topic of prophecy. They don't pay attention. Not only is useful in teaching the faith to Christians and Muslims, but also in motivating us. Why is prophecy significant? Prophecy is prediction. God, in his scriptures, predicts the coming of new messengers. In a volume I wrote, it's called Lord of Lords. I prove by statistical laws of mathematics that are used in all sciences. This is, we're talking about science, not anymore about philosophy or religion. It's proven, and no one has raised any question about this. The prediction, how is it possible that the prophets of Old Testament and Jesus Christ in New Testament predict the most significant, even detailed advent of the Baha'i faith? Baha'u'llah says everything has been predicted before. And if you read that one volume, which is one of 3 volumes, I Shall Come Again, Lord of Lords, King of Kings, all about prophecies, but very few people read these prophecies. In that volume 2, I show that the chance of anyone could claim that the prophecies of the Bible concerning the advent of the Baha'i faith is a matter of chance, is 1 to the against another number, 10 to the power of 80. 10 to the power of 80 is the number of atoms in the universe. That means if anyone could find 1 atom in the universe, could claim that the prophecies of the Bible were all by chance. This is the power of science. We use science, and many of young people believe in science, and so you help them to see that Baha'i faith is not just based on social teachings, but is also proven, can be proven by science. These are the topics that are motivational. Please form a class, find relatives, friends, they could be in Africa. Zoom brings us all together. Find 5 to 9 people and study any of these books or any other author you can find every week, and ask your young people to participate with you. I finish by saying that only God knows us, and only He can teach us the secrets of a happy life and a peaceful world. Thank you for listening. May God bless you and aid you in all your endeavors. It's been a privilege to talk to you. If you have any questions, please email to me, info@globalperspective.org. I'll be honored to answer you. If you have any questions, I'm ready to respond. I think I spoke about an hour. That should be adequate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mutlaq. There was a question during your talk about the 7th principle of the qualities of a spiritual family. could you please kindly repeat all the 9 principles?
Oh, okay. My answer would be, I don't think it's a good idea for me to repeat. These are all being recorded. My suggestion is that you listen to my talk several times. Encourage young people to listen to this talk, which is Secret of a New Civilization, many, many times, and gradually practice them step by step. Is not something you can do all of a sudden. So please, since these are being recorded, listen to them again and again, many times, until they become your second nature. In psychology, we speak about overlearning. You cannot learn something by listening or reading once. You must hear it again and again and read it again and again until it becomes your second nature, until you can recall those ideas. Once you can recall them, they become a part of you. If you cannot recall them, you have not engaged in overlearning. Thank you for this is my response.
That is an excellent response, because I know a lot of people watching right now may wonder, well, is watching this one time sufficient? Or is listening or learning something one time sufficient? It's important to repeat. That's what I'm gathering from what you're saying.
It is not. Yes, it is not. It is not sufficient. If you've taken any course in psychology, you know that in order to learn something, you must overlearn it, so that it becomes a second nature. You know, I've written a small book about physical health. You can download it on our website, globalperspective.org. It's about 20 pages. It says Health and Nutrition, My Baha'i Perspective. I talk to an audience about this principle. I've done it many times. And then sometime later, I ask people if they're practicing it. I find very little impact. Most people are doing what they have been doing for years. Change is not easy. Only through repetition and desire can you change your mind, can you change your habits. So please do not be content with listening to this talk once. Listen again and again until you can recall those number of 8 or 6 or 7 or whatever principles that I gave you, until you recall them. That is the time you will be able to practice them.
Thank you. Thank you. This is very important to cap off this talk, because when you think about it, as our listeners are maybe exposed to, but maybe not, this subject of repeating and investigating and making this a life-changing process rather than only a knowledge-gathering process. It's a it's a paradigm that isn't, in my opinion, very common, and it's very important to stress that it's the way that you approach this habitually, just as much as how you approach it the first time, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. You see, Baha'u'llah speaks about knowledge that starts with words and ends in words. This is waste of time. If you're not able to use some of this knowledge, even if you're older, spread this knowledge to others. Send a copy, write it and print it even, transcribe it and spread the knowledge. Knowledge is the light of our life. Therefore, be an instrument of this light. And many people say, I'm retired, there is nothing I can do. They spend all their time taking care of their grandchildren or taking a second job. No, spend your life spreading the light of knowledge. This is the only way we can save the world. Let me also add one more point. Mm-hmm. Many people, including Baha'is, feel that to change the world is through charity. To start a hospital, to start a school, to feed people. According to Baha'i teaching, this is not the way to change the world. In fact, Abdul Baha says clearly in a book, 9 years, a doctor who was in the presence of Abdul Baha for 9 years wrote a book. He says, if you start in charity with the intention of teaching the Baha'i faith, this is hypocrisy. He strongly forbids this. If you want to do a charitable work, fine, do it for that purpose only. But if you're trying to attract people to the Baha'i faith, this is forbidden. The end does not justify the means, and is an example of hypocrisy. The only way to change the world is through knowledge. Baha'u'llah says hundreds and hundreds of times. He uses two words, wisdom and utterance. We can grow, we can change the world. What do these words mean? The root, what feeds wisdom is knowledge. You cannot be ignorant and be wise. Wisdom means you have a powerful, you have a rich source of knowledge, and you choose from that knowledge according to the capacity and ability of the listeners. This is the first requirement. And utterance means the way to impact people, the way to influence them, to speak in such a way with all your heart and soul. He uses the word fire. You must be on fire to set the world on fire. So you cannot do this through deepening. When you sit together and discuss an issue, you cannot teach the faith. You cannot set the souls on fire. I encourage you all to reignite fireside. Shoghi Effendi says it's the best, by far the best way to teach the faith, because a speaker who is on fire sets the listeners on fire. This is the secret of changing the world. Baha'u'llah says, wisdom and utterance. Wisdom to know what to tell every listeners, so you will not alienate him, and speak in a language that sets his soul on fire. That's the only way to teach the faith. Don't spend your time and efforts on charity. We could have 1,000 Bill Gates and other charitable people, and the world will be in a mess, and is going to continue to decline as it has, and Baha'u'llah predicts that it will decline. The only solution is God's solution, and that's a spiritual solution, not a worldly solution. This is a message to all Baha'is who have wealth, and they know how to spend that wealth. They spread knowledge. This is the only way. Let me add one more point about the station of motherhood that I did not mention. I said that mothers should see themselves as co-creators with God. This is the most glorious, the most exalted station that could be given any human being, to share with God the creation of a new human being, a new race. According to this knowledge, if you're a mother and you're offered to be the queen of a country, which would be a full-time job, which one would you choose? If you are in the spiritual kingdom, you would not hesitate for 1 second to choose the station of motherhood. You will not be co-created with God if you are a queen of a country, only by being a mother. If you are given a choice to be a member of the Universal House of Justice and be a mother, which one would you choose? You will not hesitate for 1 second to choose motherhood, because then there is no station equal to being co-created with God. This is the message that all the laws of Baha'u'llah in the Atlas teaches us, to become spiritual-minded, to be phoenix-minded, so we do not emphasize money and power are the two things that people admire the most. And they all both belong to the world. They do not admire the spiritual capacity. That's the only thing we take with us. That's the only thing that is part of us. The conditioned state of our soul after we pass this 1 second to enter the eternity. No power, no money, no prestige, no success. You have the graduate of Harvard University, you have state A, you're the president of a corporation, you're king or queen. None of these from God's perspective compares with the station of being mother to create a child who will live for eternity in joy and peace, everlasting life, or fail in your duty and produce a child who will live in everlasting shame, who becomes atheist, who becomes criminal, who becomes cruel. We see them, these people all around us. And the example I gave shows the power that God can generate. Let me give you one more example. We had 20,000 martyrs during the time of the Baba and Baha. We also had over 200 martyrs in recent times after the revolution. Who were these people? They were most of them were very successful people, the most active believers and the leaders of the Baha'i faith. I knew many of them. They were doctors and lawyers and businessmen, rich people, wonderful families. They were told to utter one sentence, say, I am a Muslim, or I am not a Baha'i, and save your life. What did they do? What did they do? They refused to submit to these tyrants. They chose death rather than utter one sentence, and they could believe in their hearts, yet to show the honor of believing in God and believing in Baha'u'llah, the same thing. Baha'u'llah means light of God. When we believe in Baha'u'llah, it really means we believe in light of God. We don't believe in a person. Baha'u'llah is a human being, like the rest of us. But the light of God in him is what we admire and worship. And these people are models for billions and billions of people in the future to show the power of God in a human being. If we release this power in mothers, we can change the world. If we don't realize the station of mothers and think that the glory is in money and power, the world will continue to decline. Any questions? Any other comments from the audience?
That was all of it. Very good points, and we are about time. It was about almost 12:30 for us to end for today. We appreciate, Dr. Mutlaq, that you were able to speak on this very, very vital and vast subject today. And for all of you watching on YouTube, on Facebook, listening on Clubhouse, or you're on Zoom, which is where we're hosting this right now, please, the website that Dr. Mutlaq has that's available for you to look at the vast library of books he's written, it is www.globalperspectives.org. It's plural, correct? Globalperspectives.org.
Yes, that's correct. Perfect.
And
yes.
And on that website, you'll find the library of books. What else will you find on it?
What did you say?
What will someone find?
I cannot hear you.
On the Global Perspective website, what will they find?
Oh, on the Global Perspective, you will find, you see, I have...
In a singular.
You have said you have written 30 books. I'm honored to say the number is 50. I've had the honor of being able to write 50 volumes, in about 50 years. Sometime maybe we have another Zoom, I'll talk about my story of my life. But on that website, the topics that I covered are the most essential topics. One is introducing the Baha'i faith. Many people say, what is Baha'i faith all about? Okay, that's one topic. The other topic is afterlife. You will find several books on the afterlife that I emphasize is one of the most significant topics. The next topic is prophecy. I've spent all my life writing prophecies of the Bible, and also a book, 900 pages, prophecies of the Quran. See, as the Bible has predicted the coming of Baha'u'llah, the Quran also has predicted. This is a big book, 900 pages. It's being translated into English, has been translated into several other languages, but none of them has been published except the one in Farsi. These are the topics. I do not recall any other topics. All of them. Oh, another one is about how to present the Baha'i faith to people so that you do not alienate them. Everything I've written is for promotion of knowledge, promotion of the knowledge of God, the coming of the Bab and Baha'u'llah to the people who are searching for happiness but do not know where to find it. These are some of the topics that I recall.
And to be clear, I'm sorry for everyone that I said the website globalperspective.org. It's singular.
Yes.
And I want to show everyone the website shortly. One moment. Let me just share the screen here. So everyone is aware, this is the website, globalperspective.org. And as Dr. Motlaq was just describing, you can go through here and find a lot of information. Here are introductory books that are available, biblical and Christian books here, on Islam, teaching the Baha'i faith, as he just mentioned, life after death, knowing and loving God, Baha'i prayers, and of course, material in Persian. So there's also this item here on health and nutrition. This could be something that will be very useful for you to read. He has, what is this section here on health and nutrition, just for the curious?
I think it would be ideal to talk about health and nutrition on a separate Zoom meeting. Baha'u'llah has given, Abdul Baha and Baha'u'llah and the Bab have given us the basic rules of staying healthy. And yet today people are sicker than ever before. Many people don't realize it, and the media tries to hide this information from people. In the last 20 years, cancer has actually increased. Maybe when I talk about that issue, I had cancer because of the interference of many when I was young. I do not want to get into the story. And I recovered in 1 month from advanced cancer, stage 4. And it all depends on nutrition. The Babs told us that Baha'is should bring nutrition to a level, medicine to a level that people will be healed through nutrition. Please read that guideline many times and try to practice it. It's based on science. I did not ignore science. Is based on science and blends science and Baha'i principles. It's very tragic that we hear so many people having health problems. The people of the world have never been sick as much as they are today, because they're breaking all the laws. Junk food, lack of exercise, and pressures because of separation, spiritual separation from God, all of them are working together to create a sick society, mentally, spiritually, physically. So please read that. And if you have any question, email, I would be honored to answer you. Thank you.
And more importantly, we look forward to having you, Dr. Motlaq, to talk on that subject, hopefully soon.
Welcome. I'll be honored to do so. Yes, I'll be glad to participate. Even we can say one life is worth it. One life is precious. And it's so tragic to see young people dying too early. I'm 87 and I've had every disease you can imagine I've been able to overcome. I sometimes call myself encyclopedia of disease because of a childhood disease I had, which was very serious, I've lived to be 97, and I hope and pray, please pray that I will make it up to 100. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And everyone, thank you for coming here today, joining us for this beautiful presentation from Dr. Motlaq. We wish you a very beautiful Sunday, and we look forward to seeing you all next week.